right.
Peace, everyone. This is the Piper Carter podcast. You are listening to Piper Carter here on the Detroit is Different podcast network. And you're probably with us live here on YouTube. So, peace to everyone that's tuned in with us right now. If you've gotten the notification, like, share, subscribe, share, let people know, come on over and check us out. We have a very, very, very special show today. And it's very special because we have a guest who has been a guest before and has come back. And I'm super excited to see all of her growth and success. And we will be discussing many things. One of them is her new book and Here to Stay, and also to her journey living here in the Great Lakes, our great state of Michigan. And this is, if you don't know, April is Arab American Heritage Month. And I'm just very excited that she said yes during this blessed month of Ramadan to come in here. So um, yeah, everybody, I want you to check out my beloved Bayan Founas. So, Bayan, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Peace. Thanks for having me again. I'm super excited. I'm a
Yeah,
huge fan, so I'm really blessed to be here.
yeah. So, let's just start by telling us before we learn about you. Tell us about your Ramadan experience this time around right now.
I feel like this year is different,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if it's, you know, I feel like everything post like pandemic is different, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like even like with Ramadan too. I don't know. I felt like before, like I just always felt so tired, and I'm not gonna lie, like I wasn't too excited about it. I'd be like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my god, it's gonna be so hard working, teaching and being exhausted with the kids, and then losing weight, which I wasn't trying to lose weight. But I don't know if it was because my mindset was different or maybe
Mm-hmm.
because I've had 2 years of being at home and
Mm,
now I'm back like in person again. So it feels more like refreshing and exciting. And I'm making sure like I have the mindset of like, this is like a great opportunity to be like not just a spiritual cleanse, but like a physical cleanse, like just my body being healthier, my skin clearing up and, all of that. So, um, it hasn't been bad this year. So it makes me wonder if like a lot of it is just her mindset,
mm,
you
mm.
know?
Yeah. So, and then tell us about, you know, who you are, what you do.
Hmm.
Maybe we'll just start there because that's the whole thing.
Yeah. Where
Hmm.
should I start?
You could tell us about who you are.
Okay. So again, I'm Bayan. I am a daughter of Algerian immigrants. Um, and so I was born and raised here in Michigan, born in Hamtramck. Grew up in the suburbs. Um, and ended up going to U of M, Michigan. I studied women's studies there, and during my time there, I did a lot of work on activism for Palestine, which I think is where I got a lot of my roots when it comes to social justice. And that definitely transferred over when I started working in education in Detroit and just like that passion and that thrive for justice um, for Palestine and then just for education for kids in the city. Um, so yeah, I've been working in schools for about 8 years now. Um, what else? That's also when I started doing poetry as well. Was actually with the kids. They started doing poetry around me and I started working with them on it and it just kind of inspired me to get into it, seeing like these young kids being able to be like vulnerable and share their work. And I was like, dang, well, if they can do it, like I can do it too. And that's kind of like my mentality with a lot of things. So it just kind of pushed me to be vulnerable and put myself out there, but it's also like an opportunity for me to like just share my own story because I just got tired of like not hearing about people like me or just seeing like the stereotypes of Muslim women, um, and especially growing up like with the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, it was just a lot of misconceptions. Even till this day during like Trump's election, in his presidency. Um, so that definitely fuels a lot of like the writing and the work that I do. And you see that a lot in my poetry, my newest collection here to say, and my album as well that comes along with it. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and then also, tell us a bit about what you do.
So I'm a teacher in Detroit. Been doing that for about 8 years now. Can't believe it. It's like time is flying. And that's my main focus, my main passion, is being able to just provide a just education that's culturally relevant to the students, that they can connect to, that they can understand. Being able to teach them like their true history and true knowledge of of um, of this country and of this world. But I also try to make things like fun and interesting, and just engaging for them to want to be in school and to want to learn. Um, and like I said as well, like I'm a poet, so I do a lot of performances. I do a lot of workshops, and with that, I've also do been doing a lot of creating like curriculum. So I've worked with places like the Detroit Institute of Arts, Teach for America, Inside Out Literary Arts. Um, so I do a lot of just intersecting work between education and poetry.
Yeah, and talk about your poetry.
So my poetry, like I was saying before, so my first collection came out in 2018. That was called Diary of a Daughter in Diaspora. That was kind of like an experimental collection, I would say. It was a lot of just me just putting myself out there with poems that I've written over the years when I first started, and just kind of like putting my foot in the game and just getting my name out there and myself out there. Because they always say you got to just start somehow. And then with that, I was extremely blessed. It just really kicked off like my poetry journey and really pushed me out there to meet so many people, to travel, to do a lot of performances and workshops and lectures. Yeah, at universities, at museums, different states. So that was a blessing. And then eventually was ready for my next one. And the pandemic really forced me to like find alternative ways because I stopped performing live, and it was very difficult. It was very challenging to just like get that cut off. And so it pushed me to start creating in other ways that were accessible to people. So I started creating kind of like music videos with poetry videos, which were really fun. And I definitely want to continue doing that. And then it pushed me to create my first spoken word album, which is called Here to Stay. It's the same name of the book. The book is like the written version that people can follow along. I call it the literary mixtape. Um, and this specific collection is on themes of immigration, on belonging, on diaspora, on identity. And it really, I think this one is really special to me because it really forced me to just kind of reflect on like who I am and my journey, and where I come from, and where I am today, um, respecting um, the different things that have made me who I am today. Um, so yeah, I'm excited to share some poetry later.
Can you share one now?
Yeah, I can share one
Okay.
now. All right. So let's start with the first one. And this one is in this collection is interesting too because it's not just poems, it's actually a collection of stories and poems. So it'll be like interludes where I'll have a story about even just like with my first day wearing hijab before in school and what that experience was like. Um, And then it's unique because when I recorded, the sessions, I had a day where I had a lot of friends come by once, and we just had a conversation after listening to it to get their opinion and to get the conversation going. And so at the end of, those interludes, you'll hear those studio conversations with my friends. So I really encourage you all to listen through to the end. It's definitely really, interesting. But all right, this poem is called "When We Visit My First Home." My first home, Hamtramck. Home was filled with seas of brown faces, niqab-clad women clutching their babies, Hello Kitty and Ninja Turtle backpacks skipping to school, little smiling faces brimming below hijabs and kufis, tooth gaps wider than immigrant dreams, whiffs of curry and cumin, one bowl of couscous plus 10 hungry spoons, spicier than auntie's chutney and chai. Hooping with the boys to prove you're just as good, fresh scabs on the daily make you smile inside. Green leaves fighting through fences, grape leaves offering peace treaties. Combining all our loose change, making a metal symphony in heavy pockets, gripping my homie's shoulders, standing on the back of bikes, tall as minarets peeking past crescents, and then humming lullabies in your ears, whizzing by loud-mouthed neighbors on porches, buzzing of Arabic and Bengali tongues, mamas cursing boys to take out the trash, flashes of saffron-colored saris behind windows, hot Cheeto bags rolling in the wind. The Yemeni corner store was heaven and home. Sometimes Cheetah going to the one across the block. Contemplating life's biggest decisions, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Hot fries or hot Cheetos, now and laters or warheads, strawberry shortcakes or orange creamsicles. Combining all our chips to have more, a big chip picnic on a bed of open bags, shiny bottom reflecting our wide eyed joy. Laid out on the creaking wooden floor, sitting cross legged, open legged, laying on our stomach, on our back, red fingers and salivating spirits plotting what's next. Doe eyed kitten calendars frame wall to wall, provide solace in loud thunderstorms. Breaking fast over dates and dua on the creaking wooden floor. Knees creaking as foreheads bow on the creaking wooden floor. When we visit my first home, Hamtramck. That's that piece.
Yeah, can you tell us about how old were you when you first wore hijab to school?
I was about 11, 12, 11. Yeah.
Mhm.
When I started middle school, that's when I started wearing it.
Okay, can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Uh, well, first, the poem I just read, like I said, that was called When We Visit My First Home. And that one's really special to me because it really just describes a lot of like just like my childhood in Hamtramck. And even though I moved away when I was young, like we still visited a lot. And so that's like a lot of like sentimental memories just being there and just how diverse it was with such a large immigrant population of Yemenis and Bengalis and Polish people. Um, and I always just felt like home there. And so this poem like really highlights the different. I feel like it's a lot of like colors, a lot of imagery, a lot of flavors, a lot of smells when you hear this poem. Um, so yeah, my hijab, I first started wearing that in middle school. It was a very, I don't want to say traumatizing because that sounds negative, but at the same time, it did come with a lot of traumatizing experiences. You know what I'm saying? Like when you're wearing a hijab in a white Christian country, and I went to um uh, I ended up going to white predominantly schools when I was about like 9 or 10, and so it was a drastically different environment and experience. Whereas before, like when I was younger, we were in an Islamic school, so you never had to think twice about it. That was just normal. Um, but then, like, I just remember being so self-conscious because when you're at that age, that's all you care about is how you look and where you belong and who your friends are. And I just remember like just feeling extremely nervous going into school with it and worrying what other people are going to say. And it's crazy because there were some people, of course, who, are, I don't even know what the word is, who did kind of dissociate and step away from me. And it became even worse in high school. I feel like high school was kind of like this like fight zone. Everyone's for themselves, and it's like to the extreme about caring about how you look and who you are and where you belong. And luckily, like I had a few Muslim friends there, so that was kind of like my safety zone. Um, but there were people I remember who literally like stopped talking to me, stopped looking at me, and literally acted like I didn't exist when we like were just friends in middle school. And then as soon as we went in ninth grade, it was like they didn't want to be seen talking to me. And it's like, all right, that's what you want to do. That's you. You're the one missing out. But yeah, I mean, till this day, it's such a journey. It is such a journey, like each and every day. It just every year comes with different experiences. You know what I'm saying? That's something that happened to me when I was younger, and as I've gotten older, it's just different experiences every time.
And so, Michigan, they say, they meaning people who count people,
Mhm.
um, say that Southeast Michigan has the largest number of so called Arab people
Mhm.
outside of the so called Arab world or so
Yeah.
called Middle East. So here in Detroit, I would say that uh, because Detroit is known as the Mecca,
Mhm.
because of the many reasons, starting from obviously the people who knew about navigation on ships, whether that was the Moors or the folks that, taught the world how to read
Mhm.
and taught the world how to bathe and and taught the world math and about astronomy and all of this, all the way to the modern era of Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the Nation of Islam, or even before that, right? A
Mhm.
Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Science Temple and all of that history of just knowing about Islam,
Yeah.
right? Detroit is very used to, um, I will say, Muslim culture
Yeah.
from a black lens,
Mm.
right? And so I would say black Detroiters are
Yeah.
used to Muslim culture, or at least familiar on some level. So everywhere you go, um, in general, black people in Detroit are very familiar with Muslims, right? Or black
Mhm.
Muslims. So, but what is interesting though is when we add the immigration piece to the equation, not so much,
Mm.
because in general, Americans in general are taught about how to other everyone else.
Mhm.
Right. And so they're, especially in the Midwest or especially in Detroit, where you have like a big three, right? Like you have the for people who don't know, it's the big three car companies, right? They're unionized, and so there's this whole idea about America as an idea,
Mhm.
right? And how people quote unquote should be American,
Yeah.
and everyone quote unquote like should speak English, right? And how those people are coming here to like take your job, right?
Mhm.
Or even if you uh fast forward to, well, and then now it's in the past, the so-called 9/11 era,
Mhm.
right, where there's a whole panic, right, about who's safe and who isn't safe
Mhm.
and this kind of thing. And then you move into the I'm going to call it the Black Lives Matter era, right, where now it's like trendy to like learn about your heritage and like learn about where it's coming from. So I'm wondering, like, from a person who grew up, you know, Detroit adjacent, right?
Mhm.
Or in Southeast Michigan, who is of immigrant parents,
Mhm.
but is very much, rooted in American culture,
Yeah.
right? Can you help us understand, your world, right?
Mhm.
Because I don't want to put words in your mouth,
Yeah.
but I want to like just bring those conversations here, but
Yeah,
just help us
no.
understand your world.
Yeah, you verbalized it very well, and you bring up such a great concept that I think a lot of first generation people feel, or even second generation. Um, I mean, I think for any person of color, really, in America, I think feels this dichotomy. You know what I'm saying? Of two cultures pulling inside of them. There's that American side, which even is hard to say what American is, because it's become so like homogenous with so many cultures. You know what I'm saying? Particularly Black culture has created so much of American culture. Um, and so I talk actually a lot about that in my book as well, where you see like this clashing of cultures. And for me particularly, it's highlighted between my mother and me, because that's where you see that those two cultures very clearly. My mother is the one who immigrated. My mother is the one who raised us, because my father passed away when I was young, and so she had to be that one that kept the culture, the Algerian culture, the Muslim culture, always reminding us like, to remember who you are, where you come from, your language, to do your prayers, all of that. She would say like literally like she was so scared that she would lose us or that we would lose where we come from or who we are. Um, but at the same time, like we're born and raised in a completely different country than she was born into. And she was born into a post-revolutionary, post-colonial Algeria, literally right after they became independent from France. And so she grew up in a very different world than me, where um, I'm being exposed to, we're thinking about how we want to look and listening to hip hop music. And I want to go to the poetry cafe and, or I want to go on dates without you. So it's just like so many different things that's so normal to us. And I want to be careful about like saying us because even that can be, otherizing because that's also something we're very brainwashed to use. But um, for those of us who, like I say, are born in America, like that's just something that's second nature to us. And even just like the values and the way we think are can be so different. Um, and I try hard to think about things from like her perspective to understand like, okay, well, this is how it is in Algeria or in Arab culture. Just the concept of being out late, being out past midnight, which could be such a shame brought onto some families, in certain Arab countries. But over here it's like that's normal. It's like it doesn't mean you're doing something bad necessarily, you know what I'm saying? But it's just it is what it is type of thing. So even just like, yeah, even our mindsets.
Yeah. So, and also too, you know, just to give people an understanding, right? So if people, if you live in New York City, you probably understand, right? If you've been to New York City, you probably understand there are certain, we'll use the word ethnic, right? Like neighborhoods, right? So
Mhm.
there's, maybe Korean neighborhoods in Queens
Right.
or, this, that, whatever. In in Detroit, we kind of have like towns or cities that I would say delineate
Mhm.
um where certain communities are,
Yeah.
right? And so could you talk to us a little bit about um the different Arab communities
Mhm.
that are here, because it's interesting when people say Arab, it's like to think of like one
They think
uh
of Middle Eastern.
they think of like a Lebanese
Yeah.
probably, right? Or
Yeah.
something like that. And so
Mhm.
could you talk to us a little bit about some of the nuances of culture that are present? I'm going to say in Southeast Michigan because obviously,
Yeah.
like we can't say like all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, you and I know there's what over 30 Arab countries.
Hmm.
And I think the concept of Arab becomes very difficult to grasp for a lot of people because even for us it's hard to understand what it is because each Arab country is extremely different from the other. They have different ethnicities, different physical phenotypic features as well. And so it's hard to say if it's like a race. And even the idea of race is a social construct um, because as we know, there's black Arabs, um, such as like Somalia and Sudan, Eritrea. Um, However, then it's like for me, that's how has always been a confusing concept myself. Trying to like identify myself, but at the same time, like we shouldn't be trying to put ourselves in one bubble or in a box. So me being Algerian, I'm North African. We are considered an Arab country. We speak the Arabic language. We've also been colonized by many people, by the French, by the Spanish, the Ottomans, the Turks, and so on and so forth. It continues. So um, it's complicated. And that's something I also explore in this book as well, is like trying to figure out who I am. Um, I don't think there's necessarily like one thing because we've become, I think, so mixed over time, technically. Um, but specifically here in Michigan, I think we have so many different groups of people. I know in Ann Arbor, there's a lot of Algerians. That's where my family initially started their roots, and they had a big Algerian population there. My mom would tell me about. Actually, there's a masjid there, a mosque on North Campus of U of M. So my dad had he when he came here, he came as a student. He went to U of M, and so they had kind of like started like their own little population and community of Muslims, immigrants that came together. And my mom would tell me about how like during like Ramadan they would come together and meet at like someone's apartment and bring food together. It was just kind of like this like humble group of like immigrants on campus. Which sounds so kind of like heartwarming to hear like how roots are created in a new land. And she told me how they even like fundraise for like that mosque that's there on North Campus. So it's really great to see like historically what my family has been able to contribute. um but yeah, there's just so many different Arabs here. There's not just Lebanese. You know what I'm saying? We got Lebanese, Syrian, Palestinian, Algerians, Egyptians,
Yemeni.
Sudanese, Somalians, Yemenis, Iraqis. We got everything.
So, and tell us about, so this is the thing, right? Also, too, I mean, it's the same thing with being like American or
Mhm.
being black, like, right? It's like there's I hate to use the word stereotypical, right? But there's like a certain, archetype or some,
Mhm.
canon that we see, but we know that any of these things could be anything, right? I want to hear about your personal experience, um, and your journey to like understanding, how to understand
Mhm.
who you are, or how to, because every person, right, may have, some period in their life where they're struggling with identity, or, where there's these
Yeah.
pressures, right, in general. What set you on this path to go deeper
Mhm.
into, the identity that you have decided to, embody in
Yeah.
this journey?
So I think we understand more of who we are the more experiences we go through. So I know for me, a lot of it definitely started, as most of us, in my childhood. Um, so I grew up in Bloomfield and going to the mosques in Bloomfield, which is predominantly a lot of Syrians. But we also went to a mosque as well, a lot in Dearborn, that was Palestinian predominantly. Um, and I will say I definitely noticed a huge difference, in going to the 2 mosques and how I felt at the 2 mosques, and how, it's not like I was like, and I would say more how I was treated indirectly, that's what I should say, not directly. But I felt like, being Algerian, being African, and being around a predominantly Syrian community growing up, I felt like I didn't necessarily, like, belong. Um, and we definitely see a lot of colorism that happens in the Arab world as well. Um, and you see that, as well, particularly against, like, the Yemeni population, the Iraqi population, um, or even North Africans who do have darker skin. I feel like are looked down upon by those who have lighter skin in the community. Um, and I'm not saying like I'm talking down on like specific people, but this is just like a historical thing that we should talk about. Particularly people who are from Syria or Lebanon have those lighter features, lighter hair tones, eye color, skin as well. And so I think something like we don't tackle enough in our community is the colorism issue, and how people get looked down upon, get talked to in a different way, don't feel necessarily like equal. um, and I didn't grow up in Dearborn, but I know that's definitely like an issue I've heard a lot about, for people who do live in Dearborn and grew up there. But like I said, just from my experience, I felt like growing up in the Syrian community, I always felt a little bit different. Um, and um, Yeah, and then even, like, just going to college too, it definitely, like, helped me being around, like, so many different Arabs who you could say are more, like, self-educated and more self-aware at that age, that college age where you want to learn more, you want to understand more, so it definitely gave me a time to, like, be around so many different Arabs and really appreciate, like, my Arab culture and my Arab background, really understand a lot more about, you know, um, their backgrounds as well. But it's almost like when you leave college, it's almost like you're back in the real world and it wasn't the same anymore. I kind of felt like I was kind of just back in my own like bubble again. And then like trying to figure out again, like, oh my God, who am I? Like, where do I belong? Being in like a teacher in Detroit schools, I'm predominantly around Black populations. And so I can come off very like foreign to a lot of my kids and they, ask me a lot of questions, which is great. And I love it because I want them to learn firsthand and not, believe the stereotypes. Cause I would have people asking me like things that were very stereotypical questions, but they just didn't know better because that's all they were seeing in the news, unfortunately. Um, so it's always been like a confusing thing for me understanding like who I am and where I belong. But in the end, it's just I don't think I necessarily need to like belong in one place. And I think, whoever I'm around, like I'm constantly learning, from, mutually from each other. So
Yeah. And so with that, you know, uh so much came to mind. I used to I do teaching artists as well, like in
mhm.
different schools, and I used to um be a teaching artist at Priest Elementary. And
Mhm.
so for those who don't know, Priest Elementary is located really far in southwest
Mhm.
Detroit, which is close to Dearborn, but it's still Detroit. And it's um primarily Yemeni population and Mexican population
Mm.
that live there. And something that was really beautiful was in the parents' room. They have a parents' room that they created,
Mm.
and it's a room for parents who want to either get their GED, or if they want to spend more time with their child or anything like that. And they have them in all the Detroit public schools, actually,
Mm.
for elementary school level.
Okay.
But that was, and I've been in some different schools, but that was the first school where the parents actually used the room, like during the school time.
Mm.
And and it was so powerful for me because I had been brought in. I was teaching art in the school, but I was also, or photography rather, in the school. But the parents had asked me to teach them.
Mm.
And it was interesting because none of the parents spoke English, right? And now I speak Spanish fluently. So I was
Wow.
able to communicate with the Mexican mothers,
Mm.
but I speak Puerto Rican Spanish, so some of my words may have felt maybe disrespectful. I'm not sure, but 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 the only Arabic that I know is my prayers,
Mm.
right? So I don't know how to like speak Arabic like as a language,
Mhm.
and so however, um, what was really beautiful is we were able to communicate, and the Yemeni women were like, "You're Muslim?" I'm like, "Yeah." So they get excited about that.
Yes.
But then, what was funny is they would bring clothes for me because they were like, "Okay, we gotta dress you because you're not like covered properly," So they would bring me these like really super modest clothes to like cover me, and then they would bring hijab and
Yeah.
niqab and all these things for me to like dress me properly so I can be dressed properly. And we'd be in the parents' room. It'd be like all the mothers basically. We'd be in the parents' room, and we would be learning. And then we're not speaking the same language, but again we're just able to like maybe do kind of sign. It's not
Yeah.
real sign language, but it's us doing
Yeah.
some signs. And they taught some of them were like, I want to teach calligraphy,
Mm.
or they wanted to teach cooking and different things. So the different mothers would do like different cooking lessons, and they would
Yeah.
do, just different lessons like that. And then I was doing, some of the art lessons. And of course, the whole time they're playing the Quran or different Quranic
Mm.
um uh uh
Versus.
uh yeah, verses on like what was it, like Spotify or YouTube or something, right?
Mhm.
And it was so funny because the Mexican women thought it was music. So the whole time they'd be like, snapping their fingers and like this, like, and it was just but I thought it was like really
That's
beautiful.
hilarious.
like a beautiful exchange.
Yeah,
And then with that, everyone was getting a chance to like to share, our culture, and I thought that was really funny. And
I
a, a
love that.
a separate part was that I was teaching their kids, and some of the kids were in intermediate or middle school,
Mhm.
and and some of those kids had social media, and their parents had like no clue, right, that they had
Mhm.
social media or whatever. And some of the kids gave me their social media, and I was like clutching my pearls like looking at the kids social media. But some of them would have like, like Tupac as their avatar, or they'd be saying all types of hip hop stuff. So it
Mhm.
just kind of reinforced to me like, yeah, like, you know um just how influential Black culture is
Yeah,
on anyone that just like integrates into
exactly.
America. That
Mhm.
no matter what it was, the kids were like, they were hip hop, they're hip hop kids,
Yep.
right? So I wanted you to speak about, you spoke a little bit about it, but I wanted you to dig more into like, just like um that part of you that was just like experiencing life here in the culture that you were identifying with or just
Yeah.
experiencing. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, I think for me, like, hip hop has always been like my American life, if that makes sense. Like, it always like spoke to me in it. It's so hard to explain. It's like it spoke to me as an Algerian American. You know what I'm saying? To the experience of like understanding like who you are and where you come from, but also like fighting back injustice. And that's what always like connected me to hip hop. And for me, it was just it was the message. You know what I'm saying? I think the first person that got me into hip hop was Nas. And just like the message he would always put in his music. Yeah, it was Nas and Kendrick and J. Cole that first got me into it. Um, and it was just so like mind blowing to me to be able to like hear someone give these messages, but through like this lyrical form, that just like gave me so much like magic through my body and all my senses. And literally just on my way here, like I was listening to Shook Ones and Nas, to some old school, just to kind of like remind me of like my roots. Cause for me, it's like when I listen back to like old school hip hop, I feel like it grounds me and it grounds my center. As much as like I love new school, but like I feel like the message has really diluted itself and we've gotten like really far away from from our purpose and our center as people and what our duty is on this earth. And I feel like old school hip hop like really held to that standard. And of course, like they were beefing and doing things like that too, but at the same time, like I feel like hip hop itself is just like it's a community and it's a message, for people to like fight back for love and peace and for unity. You know what I mean? And that's what I loved about it is it also brings so many different people together. And I felt like anyone can connect to it, anyone can relate to it. Um, and it really also got me into poetry. For me, it was like I loved the rhymes and how you could tell like a story through the rhymes, and that's what gets me into my poetry is listening to rap music with meaningful messages. And it definitely gets me in that mindset.
So can you now, this is it's interesting because you talk about Nas, and Nas is like the quintessential hip hop, artist, right?
Mhm.
Like, I don't want to say everyone loves Nas, but everyone loves Nas. You know,
He's up there.
he's up there, right? And for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And I want to know if you could name, more of your artists like that you can think of that you
Inspire me?
that inspire you and that you
Definitely.
that you love. Let's
Yeah.
hear some more.
For sure. Um, so definitely, like I said, when it comes to hip hop, Nas for sure, Kendrick and J. Cole for sure. Um, as well, I mentioned like Mob Deep too. Dead Prez. Oh my God, their album. What's their album called? Is it We Are Africans? Is that what the album is called?
The third, the which one
It has like a
is it? The
orange brown
last?
cover.
Oh, which one is that one? Is that the last
Is that what it's
one?
called? What is it called?
Let me
Let's Be
see.
Free. I
Let's
think
Be
that's what it's
Free.
called.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's called Let's Be Free.
Hmm.
That album too, which is like, oh my God, it's just it's everything, especially as a poet listening to it, it's just it motivates me so much to like focus on like my roots, but also talking about healthy, normal things and still making it cool. Like they have this track about like eating healthy, you know what I'm saying? But just like the way they say it makes it sound like cool, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's not just about like talking about, you know, nice things and beautiful things, like materialistic things. Um, and then when it comes to energy, for me, Alicia Keys is huge for me. Like she has always been such an inspiration for me when it comes to like just being like true and genuine to who I am, finding like my purpose, um, staying around peace, keeping around people who have peace. And like every time like I look at her, or I listen to her, like she constantly like reminds me to come back to that, constantly come back to being like a genuinely good human being, and just like learning how to like love myself and be gentle with myself. um so she's definitely been huge on the feminine energy for me.
Mm-hmm.
um yes.
Yeah. And so then, can you talk about, because your medium is poetry.
Hmm.
Can you talk about how did you, um, learn how to write? Because poetry is it's a different medium,
Hmm.
and it's a certain level of expression. And there's the written form
Yeah.
of poetry and the spoken word form. But
Yeah.
how did you learn how to write well? Let me say that.
Well, I would say I'm definitely still learning and always evolving. But I started as a reader, and I think that's what took me into like the power and the beauty of words and the power of storytelling. I would always, since I was like, from what I can remember, like even just being 5 or 6 years old, just reading books, consuming books, and being lost in them, and having my mother take me to the library and just getting like piles of books and going through them in a week like it was nothing, especially in the summer, I remember, and just sitting outside and in the sun and by the trees. And it was always connected to like serenity and peace. And I think that's why reading and stories just gave me so much comfort. Um, and just being able to escape in them and escape from like the current reality of what's happening. And it takes you places you've never been before. It takes you into centuries you've never lived in. You know what I'm saying? It takes you into eyes of people that you've never experienced from. And that's what's so powerful about stories and particularly about books. And I feel similarly when it comes to like, you know, TV and film as well, but especially books. And so with that, I think, you know, just like with the avid reading, it just kind of, it's like all those words were already in there in my head, and it just felt natural for me to always to write. But I would say I didn't necessarily like start creatively writing. I mean, I think I wrote like a few poems here and there when I was a kid. I don't really remember, but it wasn't until after college, um, the first school I started working at, we had a poetry show for the students. And I remember the English teacher had asked me to like help the students to like rehearse and practice with them during lunch. And I just remember just being so blown away and just so amazed by the emotion and the passion, the body language, and how they were able to tell these stories, just like through their words. And I was like, wow, like, and they're so young. Like, I was like, let me try. Like, if they're gonna do it, let me just do it with them. Why not? It'll be a great experience. And from there, just I remember the first piece I even wrote too that day. Um, it was about 9/11 and just like my experience, you know, being a Muslim in America post 9/11, and about wearing hijab. And um, I remember being on stage at the school showcase. Totally forgot my words, totally messed up, but you know, it wouldn't be a first time if you didn't forget. And since there kind of just like slowly built over time. Um, I was a co-founder for two different poetry collectives. And with that, it gave me the experience to be around like very like-minded individuals, very talented and very skillful poets who were able to give me a lot of feedback and critique that helped me grow. And even just being able to watch them as well in person and have conversations with them. And it was with them that I even like learned how to, you know, self-publish my own poetry book. So, you know, I definitely would not be where I am today if it wasn't for them. Um, And yeah, just continuing to be around the youth too. Seeing their poetry and hearing their poetry just continues to like keep me grounded and keep like reminding me like what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
This is really fun, hearing about, your life and your process. Where I live in Detroit, and I live like right next to Dearborn. And I they say you should, pray, right? Like where you can walk to where, right, you can pray, or it should be like right around you, right? And I do understand, just as going back to the other conversation, I do understand about the ways in which someone who presents black is treated a bit different, right? Even, I should say, even if I'm covered, right?
Mhm.
Um, when I go into stores, right?
Mm.
Or how I'm ignored, right? If I go into a store, if I go into like a fruit and vegetable market, right?
Mhm.
I have to ask like 50 million times, like, how much is this? And it's like, and then how I'm barked at. Or if
Mhm.
um, which is partially why I grow my own food now. And or if I uh, go to a masjid that's like not as diverse, I'll say,
Yeah.
how people will like, I don't know if people know, but when you pray, put your toes together, and how people will just like, 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 I don't want to touch you type thing. So I do understand that. And at the same time, though, it is also a very diverse and welcoming place. And so there are many places where I go, like the Yemeni sweet shop,
Mhm.
that is amazing and incredible. And when I go in there, I feel like I just went to Yemen, and because the music and
Yeah.
the sofas and the community is in there,
Mhm.
drinking all types of coffees and eating their sweets, and and the uh amazing woman that owns it is just very loving and
Mm.
just kind, and
What's the
just
name of it?
the Yemeni sweet shop.
Oh, where
Yeah,
is it?
it's on Schaefer, just is it east
Okay.
of Michigan Avenue?
Okay.
So it's literally around the corner from the Arab American Museum.
Okay, okay. Yeah, actually, just last night, me and my family went to the Qahwa House. So for people who don't know, Qahwa House is a Yemeni coffee shop in Dearborn, and
Mm,
it's funny because like I literally felt all of what you were saying.
and then so where's the one that you're talking about?
Well, they have more than one location now, but the one we
Mhm.
went to was the newer one on Michigan Ave, the big one.
It's what is that? What, Michigan and what?
Um, I'm not sure.
Cuz you know how, like,
It's
cuz
like next to like Buffalo Wild Wings and Starbucks, that little area with all the little new restaurants, that whole strip.
yeah, cuz Dearborn, it's interesting. There's like Dearborn, then there's like East Dearborn.
Yeah, this is West Dearborn.
Yeah, I think
Hmm.
the one that's like closest to Detroit, is that East Dearborn? I get confused.
The one on Schaefer.
Yeah.
I think that's considered
It
East
Yeah.
Dearborn, right?
Isn't that
Yeah, yeah,
East?
that's
I get
East
confused.
because it's
I get
closer to
confused.
Detroit.
It's close to Detroit.
Yeah,
Okay. So that's where it is.
yeah,
It's right there. But it's really beautiful. Not just physically, but it's physically amazing and beautiful, but
yeah.
the
Hmm.
energy there is incredible. And then, and then there's other places all through, like if I go to ICD, Islamic
That's
Center
where I
of
used to
Detroit.
go.
Oh,
That's the one that I loved growing up going
yeah.
to.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And
Love ICD.
what I loved about that masjid growing up, and
Mhm.
this is why I say it was very different from the other masjid I went to. I don't want to
Mhm.
like say which masjid it was, but
Yeah.
what I loved about the ICD is like it had such a focus on Palestine.
Mhm.
Um, and especially because during that time it was after like the intifada, and there was just a lot of uprisings in Palestine. Even till this day during Ramadan, like we're seeing Israeli forces going into al-Aqsa Mosque, like during their
Who
holy
does
month
that?
and prayer. Like it's just it's a daily it's a daily war, you know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
so I felt like during my time there as a child, it really like rooted me and grounded me. And I feel like people who are not familiar, like when it comes to Palestine, that's such like a Muslim struggle. That's a Muslim connection. It's what we grow up to. You know what I'm saying? Like it's it's in our Palestine is like our heart when it comes to Muslims. Like we've always been taught and been around like their struggle and always wanting to fight for them, to root for them. You know, we raise money for them, all of that. And so I remember just being at the ICD, like always having fundraisers for them, going to rallies. I remember we took a whole trip down to DC when they had a huge rally down there. And I was only like in like elementary and middle school, but like it grounded me so much in like my social activism today.
Yeah, and I go to Muslim Center, right? I go to Wali Muhammad, but because I live right there, I also go to ICD.
Mhm.
And also too, ICD has it has the masjid, right? But it also is huge. So it's a community center
Mhm.
as well on purpose.
Mhm.
And I've spoken with the imam there. I mean, not at the masjid, in a whole nother setting, because he does social justice, as you said. And I saw him in another social justice setting. And I've had several conversations with him where, he's said that his goal is to create, a space that's welcoming for everyone. And he
Mm.
wants to find people that want to help bridge these gaps between, the Black community and, the different, communities that are in, that come to ICD. And he wants
Yeah.
to, serve the community. So there is very much, is called zakat, or
Mhm.
a mindset of giving.
Yeah.
It's or charity, but it's a mindset of giving, or being a, thinking of others, right?
Yeah.
And that is, I'd say it's, yes, it's a pillar in Islam, but I'd say it's a pillar at ICD
Mhm.
Masjid, and
Mhm.
I've seen and experienced that. Also too, at Muslim Center, um, in Detroit, Muslim Center is, it's a very diverse,
Mm.
um, mosque. It's got a lot of events that happen
Mm.
there. It's kind of a center of culture, but it's definitely a center of Black culture
Mhm.
here in Detroit. That's another space that's just like, welcoming, and
Yeah.
this kind of thing. So can you talk a little bit about um growing up Muslim? Because
Mhm.
I think um many people who grow up uh Christian think that, you know being Muslim is like so different,
Right.
but it
It's
really
not
isn't.
'cause
Can you
yeah.
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and I think I noticed that, like, when I meet, like, especially, like, Catholics who also are raised in very, like, conservative households or, Jewish as well, I think any person, like, I've noticed who grew up, by religious parents, we find out, like, oh, it's literally the same thing, like, you can't be out late or you can't dress like that, you can't be talking to boys or, we realize, like, it's really the same thing. It's not much different, um 'cause of course, there's also, like, Muslims who are not as conservative, and they don't have those same, like, upbringings with their kids. But I think with anyone who lives in a household that's, has discipline when it comes to religious values, it's pretty similar. For me, like, the biggest battle until I mean, it's not so much till this day, but the biggest battle for me was always about clothing. That was always the biggest, like, struggle in my household with my mother was clothes. Of course, there was, like, other things too, but, like, that sticks out to me the most as the biggest thing because it really continued into my adult years. I mean, I'm 29 now, about to be 30 in a couple months, and
Okay.
it finally, like, has definitely, like, stopped, but it took, nearly 30 years for that, for my mom to kinda just let go and realize, like, I am who I am and, I'm gonna, dress how I wanna dress. It was always, like it started, like, in, I would say high school. 'Cause like I said, that's a time, like, when you care so much about, like, how you look and you wanna look like everybody else, and I went to, like, this, like, mostly white school, and the girls were always, like, wearing, like, tight jeans and leggings and their yoga pants and the makeup and the straight hair, and so, it was hard because I always felt like I didn't, like, fit in, I wasn't, like, pretty and I wanted to, like, do more to get that attention, and so, like, I would try to, like, wear tight clothes and sneak makeup, and then my mom would catch me, and she would, like, make me go change or, like, things like that, and, It's unfortunate because I think a lot of girls like that who grew up like that, and even I know girls are like that too who are not Muslim, but also do the same thing. You know, I know there are girls who like bring a whole change of clothes in their backpack and change. You know what I mean? Like people don't realize like the cutthroat world we got to grow up in as women. And like it's unfortunate because like we seek so much like validation from others, and we're not taught at a young age to like validate one another or just validate ourselves, you know, without that male attention or male gaze. But but yeah, for me it was always the clothes. And even like, you know, you see right now I have like a little bit of hair out. Even that was like a big thing with my hijab. Like I wish I could like document a video on my different hijab styles from when I was young till nine till now, and how much it has changed. I mean, even till today, like I'm always changing it up. But I think that's also like the beauty of it is like just seeing like there's so many different ways you can do it. And I think now as an adult, like I've accepted and I'm understanding like it's not just covering my hair. It's about like who I am and as a person. And I think it's really about like being a Muslima. And what that means to me is like um it's about, you know, doing good for people. And so that's why I really value like my role as an educator in the city, because I feel like it's helping me fulfill like my purpose on this earth. It's helping me help others fulfill their purpose and realize what their purpose is. Um, you know, and not never knowing like which person I can spark, you know, to you know, create the next revolution or whatever it might be. Um and so I think for me, just like being able to stand in front of a classroom of students and seeing that I'm like this Muslim woman, you know, who's not the stereotypical one that they might have thought of, you know, when I say I'm Muslim, they actually get surprised. You know what I'm saying? So it goes to show me that like they're not, you know, they might not know what a Muslim is because it might be so diluted from the news and social media. And so I like being able to like have my own style, you know what I'm saying, but still like be me. Um, yeah, I'm going on a tangent, but
No, but it's a good, space. And then I want to go like do go back to Palestine.
Mhm.
Let's talk about Palestine because I
Yeah.
was home and then was it yesterday that I was sitting and then all of a sudden I saw
Yeah, I think it was like
what's
2
going
nights
on in
ago.
my was it 2 days ago?
I mean, it's been going on,
I
but
mean, it's been
yeah.
going on, but the most recent,
Yeah, what I
like,
saw was the one I had seen, yeah, was I think 2 nights ago.
yeah, like who like disturbs anyone in a place of worship during such a holy time,
Right.
whatever the religion,
Right.
who like what evil
Right.
person or entity
Yeah.
thinks that, oh, let's kill people during their holy
Yeah.
time, like who does that? I mean, and just, you know, Palestine has been just resilient in resisting against, because I don't want to diminish all of the amazing, struggle that people are currently
Yeah.
and have consistently been going through. Yet and still, it's really like, when will it just be enough
Mhm.
that, you know, P- Palestinians can just have their land back? All of their land has pretty much been stolen. There's a map.
Yeah, the
If people look
disappearing
it up,
map.
the disappearing map. If you
Yep.
look it up, there's the vast amount of land that Palestine
Yeah.
is,
Yep.
and then
The occupation and
the
how much land grab they have had, yeah.
yeah, and you just get to see how it's
Mhm.
just shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And at the same time, I don't understand why. Well, I do understand why nothing is being done about it,
Mhm.
but so many people I know, I've never been to Palestine. So many people I know have made that journey
Mhm.
and are involved in that work. And you've named that you've been involved in that work on the level when being in school. Could you talk about that work?
Yeah, so when I was in undergrad, that was like everything I ate, breathed, smoked, slept, you know, was Palestine for me. And we had such a, tremendous group on campus. We were called Students Allied for Freedom and Equality, SAFE, also known as on other campuses as Students for Justice in Palestine. And I just want to shout out SJP because honestly, like they're really the ones who are keeping the fight up for Palestine in America. Um, and I'm just so, supportive and proud of the work that they continue to do, because we need that. And um, yeah, it's just people need to understand like this is a systemic issue, you know what I'm saying? And this has been happening for decades now. Like we're literally seeing in real time colonization. And a lot of times when we talk about colonization, we think it's like this historical long time ago thing, but it's like, no, we are witnessing it right now in action. And what you're seeing, like when we see Israeli soldiers coming into homes of people, and we see them coming into the mosques during prayer, this is what happens under occupation, and what happens under war. This is their method and tactic, because they want Palestinians to leave. They want to disrupt their daily life, their daily way of being. Even going to work, going through daily checkpoints. You know what I'm saying? Building the wall along the West Bank, illegally building Israeli Jewish only settlements on occupied lands, even through like the countless human rights violations. Um, a lot of times it's a parallel between South African apartheid. And when we study that, we see, the way it was able to be conquered was through global support. And unfortunately, it's not until America supports Palestine, Palestine will not be free. And that's the unfortunate reality because America is Israel's biggest supporter. They are funding millions and millions of dollars through lobbies such as APAC that's supporting Israel to continue, right? And if we really think about Israel, it's really like this tiny land, you know what I'm saying? But they're able to survive and be so powerful because of America's weapons, because of America's trainings. There's a big parallel between police in America and soldiers in Israel, and how they have a lot of that same training and tactic warfare. But what was I saying? Um,
Well, I do want to say also too that when you talk about the same training and warfare, they also have the
mhm,
same budget and they
mhm,
also have the same soldiers
yeah,
because the soldiers who train uh, in Israel are
yep.
the same soldiers who train the
Train the police
police
here.
here in the
Yep,
United States, and
yep.
so you know, um,
There's a connection, and we need to keep making like these connections
mhm,
between colonial powers because we have to still remember like America is a colonial power.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And I want to, stay on Palestine for a minute, okay? Because the thing is that, you know, I I feel like, right, like in the social justice world, Palestine is a very known issue and a lot of people are like super aware. But
Mhm.
I feel like outside of the social justice world, I don't think people understand the gravity of
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
current Palestinian
Yeah,
conditions.
and this is, like, back to what I was saying, so, like, with South Africa, it became a global movement, you know what I'm saying? People started to recognize the racial apartheid in South Africa, and so what we saw was college campuses being the leaders to call out the apartheid, to end it. They were calling for their universities for divestment, to divest and sanction from South Africa to make it, less economically powerful. And so in the same concept, what I was saying was America is Israel's biggest ally. America is also a superpower in this world. We all know, like, people, or countries do not, invade or engage in warfare with America because that's you don't want to do that. We know it's the biggest power. And so, unfortunately, until America changes its policy towards Palestine, we're not going to see that. And that's why we don't see it in mainstream media. You know what I'm saying? We don't see it in mainstream schooling. And that's why I commend SJP so much, because they're the ones who are keeping that fight
And
alive.
just give the acronym.
Students for Justice in Palestine.
Mhm.
You know, and it's because of them, like, that fight is alive. And if they're listening, like, I hope you all realize, like, you are the ones that are doing that. You know, because we can't give up. And I know oftentimes people look at the Algerian, revolution against France as an example, and so Palestinians and Algerians have like this connection with each other because of that, because we were colonized for over 100 years, and I believe it was like one of the longest periods of colonization. Um, and Algeria was such a prominent example of being able to become independent through self determination, through self, through self, what's the word?
Actualization
Organizing,
or
yeah, and
organizing.
action.
Mhm.
It they call it million shahid, like the million martyrs that died for their independence. But Palestinians continue to look at Algerians as a hope. That's what it is. They look at them as hope to see, they were able to do it. And so can we. We have to continue fighting. We have to continue showing them that we're not okay. And in the same way here in America, we have to continue showing that we're not okay with something, because when we're silent and we're comfortable, their oppressors are going to continue, committing those acts of injustice and continue oppressing us. But if we continue to stay loud, continue to rise up, like we see with Palestinians fighting in any way that they possibly can, to show that they're not okay, and to continue to show Israel like that they cannot colonize them.
Yeah. And, at a certain point, right? Well, anyone that goes to uh Palestine just immediately gets put on like some sort of watch list, right? Um just going to Palestine. The
Hmm.
people in Palestine are heavily surveilled, right?
Yes.
The just to the point of, I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Hmm.
People are not able to almost function.
Hmm.
And with all of this, I definitely also want to just send lots of love and just power and appreciation and support to the people in Palestine right
Yeah.
now, because you know they are the ones who are continuing, right, to
Hmm.
live as their life, right. They're continuing to live their culture, they're continuing to push forward even through all of this.
Yeah.
So definitely want to uplift that,
Hmm.
within this conversation.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's definitely always, you always got to keep your foot on Mr. Charlie. And for people who don't know what that means the system, the oppressor, um, the system that does not want any of us to live, and
Hmm.
definitely doesn't want any of us to thrive. Um, yeah, so just wanted to name that,
Yeah.
especially since we're in, Ramadan.
Yeah.
Everyone just, whatever we can, continue to support Palestine forever and always.
Hmm.
And so now I wanted to we've been talking for like a while and people have joined, and it's so awesome. And anyone who's just joined, don't worry, you can, just take that little thing and then just go back to the beginning if you want to see the rest of the conversation. But I want to give you your personal time back. And
No, this is great. This is needed to be talked about, because
yeah.
like we just said, it's not talked about in the media. So it's outlets like this where people can learn about it and talk about it.
Yeah, and how, just so there's a lot of things I want people to reconnect with you on, but let's start with Palestine.
Hmm.
We you talked about the is it called the Jewish Students for Palestine, or
Students for Justice in
oh,
Palestine.
Students for Justice in Palestine, because
Hmm.
there's also a young group of students,
Jewish
Jews,
Voice for Peace.
Jewish Voice for
Yep,
Peace.
JVP.
They're also doing some work, and
Hmm.
then there's so many groups. But can you help us understand uh, who can folks go to send money, to learn,
Hmm.
so that we'll continue to keep Palestine on our hearts currently,
Yeah.
and supporting folks as we are here now.
Yes. And I'm so glad you're saying that, especially during this time of giving. Um, Me personally, I donate to PCRF, which is a Palestine Children's Relief Fund. So They support children in hospitals and Palestinian hospitals directly, and that's what that funding goes to. But there's so many others as well that you can simply just like Google, to be honest, like Palestinian fundraisers and charity groups that you can look up because they are in constant need of support as they continue to be terrorized every day and being removed from their homes every day. But yeah, I'm definitely glad you said that.
Mm-hmm. And then how to support you and your uh, endeavors, including your works, your current work.
Um, well, you can definitely start by purchasing my book, Here to Stay, which is on Amazon, or you can reach out to me directly for a copy. Or you can reach out to me if your event or your organization is looking for a poet or for some sort of workshop. You can definitely contact me to help you with that. Um, and there's also the spoken word album, which is on all streaming platforms as well: Apple, Spotify, YouTube. And you can listen to the album while you read it.
So before we go, um,
Already,
yeah,
that
yeah,
feels so quick.
I know it's
Where's the
already
time
been
gone?
it's already been like 2 hours.
No, it's not.
Oh, no, no, no. Okay, I'm wrong. Well, it's 1 hour 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, we can keep going. You want to keep going?
Sure.
Okay, so yeah, all right. So give us another piece then from your book.
Oh.
So if folks are just tuning in, Bayan has a new book. She came and talked to us before.
Mhm.
That was actually a couple of years ago
That
now.
was after my first book, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that was after your first book, and so she's come again, and she has a new book of poems that's also an audiobook that you can order. The link is in the description of this video. Um, but yeah, her book is called Here to Stay. And yeah, so take it away, Bayan. What would you like to read to us?
So, since we're talking about rising up, there's this piece I got called Stories Louder Than Bombs. We come together with our ancestors and descendants to drop stories louder than bombs. Earthquakes of poems narrating our histories that we will never let our children forget. Explosions of similes as loud as tectonic plates move by ancestral magic. Our pens break bones louder than fingers snapping to the rhythm of my Kalimat Arabiya and North African hips. We leave behind stories and landmines where one step will drop you, and the writer's worst nightmare turned reality. Like her brother's deadly footsteps in her room, late at night, picking out shrapnel of trauma in her adult years. We leave behind stories and landmines that will blow bodies off heels, melt cells under skin, burn hair off scalp, and bring ears deaf. Our words carve out craters to backstroke oceans back to my parents' homeland, where women of the revolution explode their limbs for freedom, where women of the streets explode their tongues for freedom. Zagharit awakening our ancestors to join the hafla and dip our fingers and toes in henna brewed with the colonizer's blood. Our poems detonate celebrations for our people that make white people laugh sheepishly and brown people laugh barbarically. Bright smiles grinning from ear to ear, teeth brighter than blood diamonds shattering when they say, "Enough is enough. You have taken more than you can give of what does not belong to you, like white people always do." Our loud dead bekkas and smell of meshwi draw in the khanzir in red and blue. Stop coming to our mosques undercover. Nothing can mask the stench of the shit you roll in. We come together to thunder. We come together to burst. We come together to rupture. We come together to dance. We come together to cry. We come together to pray. We come together to heal to the rhythm of poems because this is Mektub and we got stories louder than bombs beating in our blood and bones. That's that piece.
That's a great piece.
Thank you. I need to
Can
make a video for that.
Yeah, that needs a video.
Hmm.
And yeah, speak up on that piece a bit.
So this piece really got me just thinking about my roots, who I am and where I come from. So I had mentioned before, like about the Algerian Revolution, and I think about that a lot because it wasn't that long ago. That was like in the 50s, and just being able to know like that fight is in my blood. It's in my ancestors and it's in who I am. And I attribute a lot of like my warrior spirit to them. Um, and to my mother who has been able to come to a new land and raise kids on her own. And this is also like a kind of like a call to arms for others as well, to stand up for our people, you know what I'm saying, and to fight for who we are and where we come from. Um, and it also calls on people to like, you know, to remember who they are and to continue telling who they are through their stories as well. So yeah, I love that piece. It brings up a lot of warrior spirit.
Yeah, so I just want to go to the chat a bit.
Mhm.
And so Oya Amakisi is in the chat and she says, "Wow, that was powerful."
Oh,
And she's from the Women of Color Film Festival. She
okay.
created that and yeah, and also to Always First Class Media gave some love to you, some peace.
Oh.
And Arena Perry is in there and she was referring to the comment before when we talked about how the masjid has been bombed in Palestine, and I asked the question like, who would do something like that? And she said, the one who has no conscience.
Mm.
So, thank you for reading, that piece. So, can you speak a bit about writing that piece? Your, like what
Mhm.
you basically maybe had to do or where you had to go to write that piece.
So I feel like all my poems is just it's always different. It's not like a single process of how it works. This one I specifically remember writing. It was I believe it was like 2017, and I took my students to this poetry festival in Michigan called Louder Than a Bomb. It's like the biggest Michigan youth poetry festival. Um, took my students there, and there was a workshop we had done about I think it was like about using two different languages in poems. Um, and we specifically read a piece by Shire, and she talked a lot about like I think I remember like the themes of war in her piece, and I think we also read a piece by Safia Al oh yeah, we had talked about like musical artists that I aspire, but also like these names I'm bringing up too. Like they also have helped me a lot with my writing as well. So like I said, like Worcestershire and Safia Al who else? I'm blanking out right now. But you know these poets, Nikki Giovanni too. These poets have really like just helped me like with my own craft and finding like my own voice and being true to myself while not trying to like emulate others and emulate their style or what they're talking about. So yeah, it was in that workshop. I remember just like starting the first draft of this, and really pushing myself to talk about like my roots when it comes to that. Um, I was like, forget what I'm about to say next.
Well, you were talking about like, just the process of writing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, I'm just looking in the chat as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So you have another fan. So
Oh,
Oya says Warsan Shire is one of my favorite poets.
oh.
Yeah, so that's what's up.
And I was also gonna say, like, when it comes to poetry too, I like there was something for me about like written and spoken and how different the two can be. But particularly like I feel like there was like a recent culture of like spoken word poetry in this country that's like I would call it more like slam poetry. And I'm not gonna lie, like I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not a big fan of the style because for me, like what really got me into poetry is more of like the 90s style. So if you're looking at more like Def Jam poetry, I would say that's like a lot of what's helped me become the poet I am too. It's like the more we talk, the more my memory is unlocking. But I remember in college watching this Palestinian poet, Suhair Hamad, on Def Jam Poetry. And it blew my mind seeing this Palestinian woman on this American stage, you know what I'm saying? And talking about her experience right after 9/11 in New York, being from New York and talking about being so scared for her brothers and what could happen to her brothers. Um, but also being like so frightened by anytime she would hear news of like a bombing or something and just praying, let it not be a Muslim. Let it not be a Muslim. Because we all do this where anytime we hear about some sort of violent incident, we have to always hope that it's not a Muslim because we know as soon as it is, they're going to say this is an act of terrorism. And we immediately get backlash on the Muslim community. You immediately see a rise in hate crimes, as we do, with any incident, such as like with COVID, we saw a rise against the Asian community, unfortunately. Um, and so, yeah, like just seeing her on stage just like blew my mind to be able to be like, wow, like I can talk about that. I didn't know I can talk about that. You know what I'm saying? And so she definitely like was a huge inspiration for me. Um, but yeah, like I was saying, like I feel like there's such a difference between that era of poetry and what we've been seeing lately, like with slam poetry, especially like online, or if you like go to the festivals themselves. And I feel like with slam, it's like a lot of the same cadence and flow, and there's no like uniqueness. You know what I'm saying? But when I look at much older, there was such a big connection to hip hop. And that's why I keep coming back to hip hop because it's also intertwined. You know what I'm saying? You would see, even someone like Kanye on Def Jam Poetry, bringing his work on there. And, even just the hip hop artists themselves, they're poets. You know what I'm saying? I think I would argue that they're poets first before they're rappers because they have to write their poems, in order to perform them. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go to the chat a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, well, Oya says yes, the voices of women are needed. Another thing she says is we need your lens. Western media and institutions invested in imperialism will never tell us the whole story.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, you know, can you talk about that a little bit about
Yeah.
your
So
lens?
what I love what she said because in the poem I just did, I said something that would for someone else be controversial. So I had said, um, I said, back to my parents' homeland, where women of the revolution explode their limbs for freedom. Where women of the streets explode their tongue for freedom. Li-li-li-li. So, like, when I say that, and then it says, like, Zagharit awakening our ancestors to join the hafla, like, join the celebration, and dip our fingers and toes in henna brewed with the colonizer's blood. And so, like, I think when people, I'm trying to like it's unfortunate, I feel like when we say something and you fear like not sounding stereotypical, and that's another issue like we deal with. But like when I say women of the revolution explode their limbs for freedom, I'm literally talking about women suicide bombers.
Mhm.
And sometimes like I get afraid to talk about these things because I don't want that double stereotype. You get what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Mhm.
Because it's already that stereotype that Muslims are terrorists and bombing themselves up. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? But in actuality, when we're talking about revolution and wanting to free your land because you love your country that much, you love your people that much, you will die for your country and you will die for your people. And a film I think about is the Battle of Algiers.
Mm.
And I recommend so many people to watch that, as well as another movie similar called crap, what's it called? I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's about this woman, Algerian revolutionary Jamila Bouhairad, and it follows from the perspective of a woman revolutionary during that time, and that was such a amazing film to see like how much women were so integral into the battle. You know what I'm saying, on the front lines. And so yeah, I really like appreciate her saying that because when we say it from our perspective, just hearing what I just said right now versus what you turn on the TV and see, you know, another suicide bombing, da 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 da. You know what I'm saying? But it's like we don't understand like you have these colonizers taking away your land and taking away your resources. And it comes to a point where you will do anything, you know what I'm saying, to get that back. And we see that with Palestinians right now, they're not giving up the fight.
Yeah, and can you speak a bit more about that? Because, in my travels, I've uh, experienced different communities, whether it was in the Amazon, right,
Mhm.
in Brazil or in Chile or wherever, where it's not a Arab thing,
Mhm.
right? It's a human thing
Yeah.
that people want to be free. People are, fighting for their liberation. People have been trampled on by colonizers, imperialism, and people are protecting their land. They're
Mhm.
protecting their water. They're protecting their resources. They're protecting their culture, right? And I think in the Americas or in the United States, let me say that isn't understood as much to your like mainstream American,
Mhm.
um, because in general, your mainstream American is a consumer and is just trying to get to the next day
Mhm.
and doesn't understand that type of connection,
Mhm.
right? To to a place or to a lineage in that way, right? Because of the levels of colonization
Mhm.
that have made different people here disconnected. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm just including different people as not even just a race. So it makes a person more connected to this idea of trying to be aligned
Mhm.
with whiteness or trying to be aligned with capital, right? That's kind of in a United States or like an American, right, idea.
Mhm.
So could you speak a bit more about that, because that could be like something that people would be kind of scratching their head about, like,
Mhm.
oh, because in a United States context, that if one were not have not traveled, that could have a meaning of like your block,
Mhm.
right? Which in our context, many people don't even own, right? Like where they live
Mhm.
in that sense. So I wanted to see if you could kind of help people understand, that part of culture.
Can you rephrase your question?
Yeah, so just the part about that connection, the part about being connected to the land
Mhm.
in that kind of way.
Mhm.
Just the way of the spiritual connection, the
Yeah.
cultural connection, um, in a way that it would be in your heart
Yeah.
as such.
I mean, I think for me, like, I love to look at things from like a big picture and big perspective. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we should always take time to like reflect on our journey, reflect on our life purpose. Like, why are we here in this exact moment? You know what I'm saying? Why am I physically here? Why am I spiritually here? Um, and so I like to kind of like almost literally like take a step back, you know what I'm saying? And not just physically, but also like through time too. Like look at things, even multi-generational and understanding like who I am and how I've gotten to where I am today. Being the first person in my line to be on American land. You know what I'm saying? And thinking about like I just try to imagine years before and what that might have been like, how much, my ancestors have had to what they have had to gone through, to keep their land and so forth. So yeah, for me, it's like I just in order to like understand like who I am and my constant journey, I feel like I have to constantly, take a step back and not get so focused on like the little things, you know what I'm saying? Because I think we get so caught up as on that as Americans. Um, I'm not sure much how it is like in other countries, but I feel like we just get so caught up in like the day-to-day life and the, just the real small things that don't really matter, particularly when it comes to like historically, what are we leaving behind in our legacies?
Yeah, and can you speak a bit about, you've talked about some aspects of your personal legacy, and I wanted to know if you could help us understand what are some of the Algerian legacies.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, So for me, like, I feel like I'm myself, I'm like a product and a legacy, of my people, because I don't think I would be here today if it weren't for them. Like my poetry is the legacy, of my people, and it's my legacy that I'm leaving behind and going to continue to leave behind for generations. And that's what gets me so excited about being able to write, because now I know, like, forever, that these stories will be here written by me, about me and about my people, and it's not written by anybody else, who can make assumptions or anything that might be washed out, and we talk about that a lot in my classroom, is being able to own your own story. You know what I'm saying? And it's great to see, like, kids these days, they're understanding more and more about that concept of, you know, education in America being very whitewashed. And I'm really glad to see that, but I want to push them more to be able to now, like, it's about now documenting your own story. Now, who's going to write it? You have to write it. You have to be the one to leave that legacy behind for those next generations. Because unfortunately, so much of it has been wiped away.
Mm. And so in Southeast Michigan, you spoke about, did you say in Arbor? There's Algerian community in
Mhm.
Ann Arbor.
Mhm.
Where else are there, like, or is that kind of an Algerian community, or where
Mhm.
else would we see, Algerian culture here?
So, unfortunately, not many Algerians come to America because it's also very difficult to be allowed to come here. So most of them, which is so contradictory, go to France, or other European countries. And then when it comes to the Americas, they come to Canada. So you'll see a lot of Algerians, and actually just North Africans in general, in Canada. And because they speak French, French is also a primary language in Algeria. So
Hmm.
it's easier to adjust.
Yeah. And so if we want to, um like, taste something from Algeria, like,
Couscous.
what should we look for?
Definitely couscous. That's like our national dish.
Hmm.
Definitely couscous.
Any more dishes you want to share?
Um, that's like the staple that
Hmm.
I can think of right now.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna lie, like, I know it sounds terrible, but, like, I don't eat much Algerian food, or,
Hmm.
like, it's hard to say what Algerian food is because it's been so mixed with
Hmm.
different, like, cultures. Like, a lot of our food is, um, we have, like, a lot of pasta-based food,
Mm.
you know, um, we have a lot of, like, the Spanish influence, the French influence, the Turkish influence. So you see, like, a lot of that combined. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. And then talk to us about, like, your mom, because you talked a little bit about, like, your mom
Mhm.
is a kind of different culture than
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
And can tell us about your mom.
I feel like I talked a lot about her just in terms of, like, forming who I am.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Because, like I said, she was the one who really, like, instilled in making sure, like, we didn't forget, like, who we were, where we came from, when it came to not just, like, our culture, but our religion too. And also, like I said, she was always, like, I felt like she's always been, like, my reminder of that, you know what I'm saying? Because even, like I said, we would always have those daily battles of, like, how I would dress and things like that.
Mhm. And then, like, how does your mom see you now? Like, doing your poetry and your writing and your performing, and then with your style, like, how is that now?
I feel like as I've gotten older, she's just accepted it. I think before it's probably like a foreign concept to her. You know what I'm saying? And I think for a lot of, like, immigrants, like, they want their kids to, like, be doctors and, engineers, things like that. And it's like, well, I'm the teacher, what I'm saying? I'm doing art, and I'm almost 30 and still not married with no kids. So I'm definitely like this huge, like, outlier. But it's like, it is what it is, and it's who I am, and I've accepted it, and I'm okay with it. Um, like I said, like, I think I'm also at peace with it because, like, I've come to understand, like, my purpose here and, like, what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wanna, I really would love to meet your mom, just because she seems, like,
But
really
she's
cool
a
and fun.
great cook.
Okay.
That's what she's really known for, is her food.
Okay, that's why I gotta meet her.
Yes, I have to definitely invite you sometime.
Yeah, that's a
I
reason
wanted
I
to
gotta
do
meet her.
an iftar dinner, 'cause sometimes I'll do one and bring,
Mhm,
like, everyone I know, and
mhm,
she was like, I'm too tired this year, not
mhm,
this year."
mhm, mhm, mhm.
So, maybe after Ramadan.
Okay,
Yeah.
inshallah. Yeah. So, now we have been here almost, well, we've been here about an hour and
Yeah,
35
we can
minutes.
wrap it up.
Yeah. So let's let people know again, because this
Yeah.
is part of the reason we're here,
Mhm.
during this blessed Ramadan to celebrate, during the month of April, Arab American Heritage Month.
Mhm.
Let's celebrate your book and your
Yeah.
new book. So let's give it one more go.
So again, you can check out my newest collection. It's called Here to Stay. And it's on Amazon, or you can reach me directly. I'm on all social media. My name is Bayan the Poet, Bayan the Poet. And that's the best way to reach me.
Yeah, and thank you all, and all of your links are in the description of this video as well.
Mhm.
So I want to tell you thank you for coming. It's been wonderful learning more about you,
Yeah.
your work. Thank you for the great conversation,
Mhm.
for keeping all of these important issues at top of
Yeah.
mind for all of us, for
Mhm.
educating us
Yes.
on culture. We need more of this,
Mhm.
cultural competency, so that
Yes.
we can be better humans in the world.
Yes, it's important not to forget, 'cause I
Yeah,
feel like we get complacent in our daily life,
I think so.
So
Yeah,
it's good to have these conversations.
yeah.
Definitely.
And everyone follow Bayan on all her socials. Get that book, get the book, get the
Mhm.
book. I said it 3 times.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
And then so this is Piper Carter. You're listening to Piper Carter podcast, or you have been, on the Detroit is Different podcast network. We thank you all for listening. Thank everyone who joined us in the chat. Please like, share, and subscribe. All of the links are in the description of the video. And we're live on YouTube every Tuesday as well at 8 p.m. This coming Tuesday, we're going to have Stacey Hotlegs Hale. We're doing it's also Jazz History Month, but this month has been Arab American Heritage Month. And I'm just really excited that we had Bayan today, because she's so special and so
And you are
awesome.
so special to me, and I
Oh,
just wanna thank you so much. Like, you are such a queen in our community, and I always looked up to you, so it means a lot that you want me on here.
she's gonna make me cry. That's a
Oh.
Bayana is I consider her one of my babies. She invited me when she was still in college,
Oh my god.
at University of
Oh, when
Michigan.
I was doing my master's,
Yeah,
I brought you to the hip hop course with, Professor Stephen Ward.
yeah.
Shout out Stephen Ward, I haven't talked
Shout
to him in
out
a
Stephen
minute.
Ward. Yeah. So yeah, listen to Piper Carter podcast here on Detroit is Different Podcast Network. We're on Instagram, and we also have a Facebook group and a Facebook page, Piper Carter Podcast. And we have a website, pipercarterpodcast.com. But check out all the podcasts on Detroit is Different .net. And that's it. We will see you Tuesday. Peace.
Peace.